Okay, so welcome to today's video tutorial lesson on graphing the equation of a line review, and it's on the four types of lines. So the four types of lines we have are positive slanted lines, negatively slanted lines, and horizontal lines, and then you have vertical lines. So each one of these has an equation that maps to it, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the video. One of the things that I want to point out though before we get started is that positive slanted lines, where I have highlighted here, you want to begin to notice them that lines that have positive slopes, when you look to the right side of the line, okay, notice that I have highlighted here the right side. Notice that this right side is going up, and it's going up. So as I move across the line, my finger is going up. Now, what's important is the fact that you must be looking at the right side of this line. Don't look at the left side of the line, okay? Because it is known that graphs are read from left to right. So at the end of the right-hand side, if the line is pointing up, it's positive. It's positive. So when you graph a line, if the slope is positive, just check back to make sure your line is heading in the up direction. On the opposite of that is negatively slanted lines, which if you look at this one, as my finger goes to the right, it ends up down. So I'm highlighting the right side of each one of these graphs. So if I go to the right, it's pointing down. It's pointing down. So when you graph your line, if the slope is negative, just make sure when you graph the line that it's pointing down. All right, so let's go check out some examples here. So reviewing the equation of a line, I've got some things written down here that we've gone over in the past. But I want to point out to you that the equation of a line above is y equals mx plus b, or y equals b plus mx for slanted lines. Okay? So these types of equations, all right, are going to have slanted lines. Meaning, if you have a number with x and you have a number that doesn't have an x in your equations, you are going to have slanted lines, okay? So these are the ones that you want to look out for. First of all, let's talk about what do the variables represent. So the number that is always matched with x, the m, has a name, and its name is called the slope of a line. So it's not going to be a variable m, it will be a number. And slope, okay, as we've talked about in the past, all right, the slope of a line is defined as the rise over the run. Now the rise is the change of the y-coordinate, so it's how much you're going to change your y-coordinate, and the run is how much you're going to change your x-coordinate. So, great, I have to change a y-coordinate and I have to change an x-coordinate, but where do I change it from? Well, that's the importance value of the b. The value that doesn't exist, the plus b, okay, the one that doesn't exist with an x, so notice there's no x with this b, all right, that is the starting number that is plotted on the y-axis, also called a y-intercept. And you may hear me refer to that in the problem. I may not say it's the starting number plotted on the y-axis, or sometimes I may say it's the y-intercept when I'm explaining this video. But do know that if I say them, they mean the same exact thing, okay? All right, so let's get into this review a little bit. All right, so graph the lines of, I have two of them. Now on my graph, I'm going to use this one graph, and I'm going to graph both of them together. So, excuse me, so the first one that I'm going to graph, okay, is going to be this y equals 2/5 x minus 4. Now, before I do anything, okay, I have to figure out where do I start from, because one of these numbers is a starting point and the other one of these numbers is telling me how to change both my x and y value. Now, notice a fraction has two numbers in it. So the part of the reason why you want to remember slope as being a change of two things is because which one of these numbers, okay, has two numbers that make it up. And the 2/5 is the one that makes it up. Okay, so that's the one that's going to be your slope. That one has two values with it. Okay, so sometimes picking out the slope for these is relatively easy. So Also, we should know that we definitely know that 2/5 is our slope because what is 2/5 paired with? It is paired with our x. So what this means is that m is 2/5, which means, okay, we go up 2 and right 5. Okay, so now we have our directions. The question is where do we start from? And to figure out where we start from, we go locate the number that doesn't have an x with it. So -4 does not have an x with it. So that must mean we start, okay, on y equaling -4. So to go through this process with you, okay, we will go through that. So first we have to start somewhere. So I'm going to go to the y-axis and I'm going to start at -4. So I will go to my origin and I will look at for the y-axis. The vertical line with the numbers on it is the y-axis. So I will plot a point at -4. So there's my point. So I'll draw this in red so hopefully it sticks out. Now I've got my starting point drawn. From here, what I need to do is I will use my slope. So counting from this point, I will count up 2 units. So I go from -4 up 2, so up 1. So I go from here, I go up 1, 2. But I don't put a point here, okay, because slope is 2 directions. So I don't go up 2 and mark a point. I have to go up 2 points, but then that's followed by going right 5. So up 1, up 2, and then from here I go right 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, what's important to note, okay, is I'm going to put a point here after I've done both directions. So putting my point here, I go ahead and point it there, okay? So again, what we've talked about in classes, I don't just want to stop there. Slope is constant. It means that I'm constantly going to do that. So from this new point that I made, I can continue that same pattern. Go up 1, 2, over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The last thing I kind of want to point out to you is, notice when I'm counting, I don't actually count until I move my finger. So once I move that finger is when I begin counting. Now, notice that I went up and to the right, but if I wanted to get points the other way, I would just go the opposite directions. So if I went up 2 and right, okay, up 1, 2, and right 5, I can do the opposite to get back. From this point, I could go left 5, and then down 2. And then from this point, I could go left 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, down 1, 2, and put a new point. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to go put a point here. And then from here, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, down 1, 2. So now what the nice thing about slope is, it doesn't matter whether I go up or down or left or right first. What matters is that you understand what number associates with the x values that move left and right, and which one associates with the y values that moves up and down. Now, once I have all of my points plotted, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw my best straight line that I can. I understand that you may not have rulers at home, so we're just going to draw our best line that we possibly can. Okay, so then we're going to go on to the second example after that one. And the second example I have here is y equals 8 minus 1/2 x. And one of the first things I'm going to notice here is that in the first equation, x was first, and now in the second equation, x is second. So when you observe these types of problems, what you always have to remember is that m, okay, is always next to x. It's always in front of the x. So the number that is right next to x and in front of it, okay, and, all right, there's no sign in between it. So there's no adding or subtraction sign in between the two numbers. So notice, in between that 1/2 and that x, okay, there is no sign of plus or minus. That means that -1/2, so we have to take the sign that's in front of it as well, because it's not just plus 1/2, it's minus 1/2. So in this case, I have an m that is -1/2, so -1/2. which means that if for my slope, my rise over my run, I'm going to change my y value by going down 1 and right 2. And then lastly, I have this number 8 that's left. Well, 8 doesn't have an x with it, so that means surely that I must start at positive 8. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do that. So now, you can't start at positive 8. Notice on these graphs, there are two positive 8s. There's one on the x-axis, which is over here, and there's one on the y-axis. You have to remember that for graphing lines, we start off of the vertical axis, the y-axis, okay? So here we go. We're going to go ahead and plot that point. So we're going to plot a point, and I'll graph this one in green. So we go to positive 8, and I put a point on the y-axis. And then from there, I'll start counting. From this point in green, I will count down 1 and then right 2. And at that point, I'll mark another number. And then I'll continue that pattern. From here, I'll go down 1 and right 2. And I'll mark another point. Down 1, right 2. Mark another point. Count from here. 1 and then right 2. So 1, 2. Mark another point. So I'm going to go ahead and mark those points. So point, point, down 1, over 2. Down 1, right 2. Down 1, right 2. Down 1, right 2. If I go the opposite way, notice I had to go up 1, left 2. So if I go at any point here and I want to move to the left, it would be up 1, left 2. 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 And from this point, what I'll go ahead and do is I'll draw the best straight line that I possibly can. Okay? So from there, what you have is that you've got another line. Now, that may be hard to see, so let me go ahead and fill that in blue. I don't know if that was hard to see or not, but I'll fill it in blue as opposed to the green here. So I'm not sure, just in case you can't see it. So let me fill that in. So the hand, which what I was explaining with, is the one where I got my numbers from. But remember, notice all of these points are all, okay, in a relation of up or down 1 and to the right or left 2 from one another. All right, so we have here graphed both a positive slanted and a negative slanted. Now notice, when I pointed out in the beginning, if you have slanted lines, they are in the form of y equals mx plus b. Okay? All right, so here we go. Next one. So now we have some more lines. All right, so we're just going to graph some more here. So the thing we're going to go back through is the first thing I always locate in the problem is where is the slope. The slope is located at -1/2. So m equals -1/2, which means that I'm going to go down 1, right 2. And that I start at, well, what number do I start at? What number up here doesn't have an x? And that is -6. So -6. So here we go, starting at -6 on the y-axis. So I go down 6 values, and I mark a point at -6. And from there, I will count down 1. So down 1 and right 2. Now, to graph a line, technically you only need 2 points to draw this line in here. But the next topic we're going into, which is graphing a system, which is graphing 2 lines, right, on one graph, similar to what I'm doing here, all right, it's going to be helpful to just graph all of your points possible. So I'm just going to continue that relationship of going down 1 over 2, down 1 over 2, down 1 over 2, down 1 over 2, until I run out of space on my graph. Now, if I want to reverse that direction, I go the opposite way. So as I go back to the beginning, as opposed to going down 1, right 2, I can actually go up 1, left 2, up 1, left 2, up 1, left 2, up 1, left 2, up 1, left 2. And then I will do my best to draw a straight line, okay, without a ruler, straight down on and through here. And there we go. I have my line drawn. So let's go to the next problem. So again, it's a repeat. It's recognizing who is slope and who is the starting point. So in this problem, this number doesn't have an x, and 1/3 does have an x. So here we go. The number that doesn't have an x is my starting point. The number that does have an x is my slope. So m equals 1/3, which means I go up 1 and right 3. Now, I have to go up 1 and right 3 from somewhere. And that somewhere is my starting value. So I'm going to start at y equaling 2. All right, just writing it a different way. So I'm going to start at y equaling positive 2. So when y equals positive 2, here I am. And I will go up 1 from here and to the right 3. So from this point, okay, so from this point, I will go counting up 1. So I don't go 1 here, I go 1, and then I go right 1, 2, 3. And I will continue that pattern. So up 1 over 1, 2, 3. Continuing 1, 1, 2, 3. And I will mark all my points along that pattern. So here we go. There's 1, there's 2, there's another, and here's another, going the opposite way. Just going back to the beginning, just going opposite directions, following that pattern. And now I have it, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to draw my line. Now, notice both of these lines, they cross, which is okay, no worries. Just draw it using the same graph to draw them, but this is how I would do it. All right, so then we have 2 more examples, but these are relatively easy ones. They're not that bad. These are the special ones. So we just went over 4 examples of slanted lines. Let's continue on with the other 2 types, which are horizontal and vertical lines. So let's take a look at what we've got next. Okay, graph the lines of y equals 5 and y equals -3. So what you'll need to remember is that y equals, okay, lines, all right, these are what we call horizontal lines. So the number that is here, okay, specifically is telling you where to draw a horizontal line through. So we go to where y equals 5 and we plot a point. So on our graph, we'll go to this here is still our starting value, but we go to where we have y equals 5. So on the y-axis, we go find positive 5. We mark it. And then after that, we simply draw a horizontal line through it. And that's all that means. What's tough for people to understand here is that when y equals 5, it's a horizontal line, even though the y-axis is vertical, right? That's the tricky part about this one, because you think you want to draw a vertical line because the y-axis is vertical, but equations of y equals are all horizontal lines. So that's something you have to learn to remember and kind of, go through it. Now, I don't know what the neat trick of this one is, but I always remembered that I always, whether I draw a horizontal or a vertical line, I always cross through the axis, okay? So the only way to cross through a vertical line would be to draw a horizontal line, okay? So going on to the next one, I'll draw this one in blue. It says y equals -3, so my starting point is at -3, and I now need to cross through that point. So I can't draw a vertical line because that doesn't cross through it, it doesn't cross over it. So what I remember is a horizontal line, I cross over it. Okay, so no other variable. So if I have an equation with just one variable, you plot the point on its axis and cross through it. Okay, so horizontal lines. Let's go on to the next one. Okay, so now we have the opposite. Now we don't have y equals, we have graphs that say x equals. So for this one, I will go to where x equals 5 and I will plot my point. So on the x-axis this time, and this is the only time a line ever starts with a point on the x-axis. No other line ever starts with a point on the x-axis. So x equals 5, we plot that point. Okay, sorry, I missed that value. So now we have to cross through that point. So to cross through that point, I must draw a vertical line. So my best, oop, that one was a little squiggly. Okay, so drawing a vertical line here. So here we go. My best vertical line. There it is. Ooh, vertical lines are tougher than the horizontal ones. So there's my best vertical line. So we go to the next one. It says x equals -1. So I'm going to put a point at -1. And again, I'm going to cross through it. So I'm going to draw a vertical line. So there's my best vertical line without a ruler that I could draw by hand. Okay, so there's our review of the 4 types of lines we've graphed in class. So what I want you to do now, next page here, is I have 4 lines. So what I want you to do is to take a moment and I want you to graph each of these lines. Now, if you're in my class, I'm going to provide you with 6 graphs in Google Classroom that you could use so that you don't have to draw your own graphs, okay? But if you don't have that and you don't have graphing paper, just do your best with a ruler to draw your best own axis. I know it's going to be tough, but for now, do your best that you can and come up with something. Hopefully what the goal is that you get lines that are going the right direction. So look for positive slopes, go up to the right, and negative slopes go down to the right. And then horizontal lines are flat lines straight across, and vertical lines are lines that go straight up and down. All right, so good luck. I wish you the best, but here they are. If you want to pause the video, take a quick little pause and write these 6 equations down. But again, like I said, I will attach the resource for you in Google Classroom if you're part of my class. All right, have a good one.